For some reason, the mother, ever since Kathleen died, she's like, no, a wedding will never take place here. I don't want that woman here, blah, blah, blah. It's all arguing. Louise, the whole time, is doing the Terminator eye scan, looking at everyone's interactions, learning about this grief from this dead family member, and putting a plan together. Why spend 120 million of your own cash when all you need is the spare change from a Roger Corman movie? Because this week it's Dementia 13 from 1964, directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
A scheming widow plots to claim her late husband's inheritance, unaware of an axe murderer stalking the estate. We got Francis Ford Coppola's upcoming passion project, Megalopolis, and I like to plot the evolution of directors. So before I saw his latest, I decided to see his first to see that evolution.
It's interesting as well because this film was really made out of the crumbs left over from other films and other studio time. He was working as a sound guy on Roger Corman's The Young Racers from 1963. As he was looking through the books and they were kind of ahead on shooting schedule, and Roger Corman realised, oh, I've got about 22 grand left over. So he turned to Francis Ford Coppola, who he knew was talented and budding filmmaker, and said, you want to make movies, here's 22 grand, you've already got a lot of these sets, I'll let you use some of the actors that want to stick around who have already been in this film, make me a movie. I want a Psycho ripoff, but with loads of sex and violence. And Coppola said, all right, bang, this is my big opportunity. He wrote a treatment that night. He promised him, I'm going to give you loads of horror and gore and violence, tons of sex and nudity. It's going to be Friday the 13th before Friday the 13th. It's going to be great. Because he was using the same actors and the same sets, he had to film around the shooting schedule of The Young Racers. Despite that, he managed to complete the film in just 9 days, which is incredible for any film, especially when you're working around the logistics of another film already in production. Even the original musical score, composed by Ronald Stein, was done in the little bit of leftover studio time he had after finishing composing the score for another film called The Terror. So literally everything about this film is made in the gaps and the breaks and the leftover spare change of other films. And like you said, it's Francis Ford Coppola's debut. So there's really everything going against this film for it to be just awful and for it to be no one's fault. But I was pleasantly surprised. I really liked it. Right from the get-go, as we open up with this husband and wife, they're on this pier and it's filmed from above and they're climbing onto this boat. He's like, leave me alone, I want to go off by myself. And she's like, I'm coming with you. So they go off rowing. Now the dialogue is stilted and terrible, and you can really feel that this script was written by a novice in about 2 or 3 days.
That's my biggest fault with this film. The dialogue is just awful. The 9 days makes total sense because the conversations seem very forced.
The dialogue in the opening scene is just all about exposition, it's just establishing, but the acting actually isn't bad at all. It's a weird thing, in this film, throughout the whole thing, you can tell they're not the greatest actors in the world. Some are much better than others, but no one actually gives a bad performance. And the visuals are really cool. There's something about this couple on this rowboat, but it's at night. So it's nearly like they're just rowing through empty space. It's got this kind of otherworldly vibe to it all. And it's odd because you don't know where they've come from, where this boat's from, if they're in the sea or in a lake or what's going on. So it creates this quite odd atmosphere right from the get-go. And I think even though obviously there's technical limitations because of experience and budget and time restraints that are pretty obvious in moments, you can really see Coppola's talent shining through.
This was a real baptism of fire for Coppola. But what I do like about this film is some films just suit black and white. Raging Bull, if that was in colour, it wouldn't be the same film, you know, and this is one of them. It really suits the fog, the eeriness, the black and white, and, you know, looking at stuff after, this hasn't had the best reception. When you take how rushed it was, the end product is good.
Like, there's some obvious flaws with it, but his directing and handling of the storytelling is really good because it's a confusing film by construction. It's meant to be, at its heart, not quite a murder mystery, but a mystery of sorts. It sets up the premise straight away. We've got Louise, who is going to be our kind of chief villain to start with, who is clearly this conniving, calculated, plotting woman, beautiful American girl who's met this guy, and she's straight away talking about, we got to change your mother's will. She's leaving it all to charity. And he's like, you just want the money. You're greedy. If I die, you won't get any of the money. Oh, I'm having a heart attack all of a sudden.
That was poor.
And she's looking for his pills, and she realizes it's empty and he's forgot to get his pills refilled. and he has a heart attack and she's trying to resuscitate him and she starts rowing madly back. It's a great moment because you see what an evil piece of shit this woman is. As he dies and she realizes without him she doesn't get any inheritance, she starts beating his dead body. Like, it's so callous and disgusting. This bitch is ruthless.
She has essentially no emotional connection with him. Like, she's just using him to get that money, and when that's off the table, fuck it, I don't need him anymore. In the water you go, never to be seen.
Well, it's not that, it's the opposite.
Oh yeah, you're right, actually.
It's the fact that she realizes, fuck, I need to get rid of his body and make a reason, because if it turns out he's dead, I'm totally out of this. I need to get that will changed and I guess kill the mother before anyone figures it out. So she does the old American Psycho routine, dumps him into the water. We get this cool, wacky, psychedelic credit sequence as he's floating through the water and it's flying through this pond. She runs home and starts writing fake letters and packing a suitcase in case anyone checks, covering up all the loose ends to make it look like he's gone on some business trip to New York. And then heads to the estate. And I love it because although it's kind of been clumsily done, within the first 5 minutes, we've introduced the main character, we've established her motivation, we've created the obstacle that she needs to get around, and then we get to the setting of the castle estate. You start getting introduced to the characters and you think, all right, you've got a plotting, scheming femme fatale, you got a really weird family doctor who seems to be getting way too involved, the death of a beloved loved one that seems to hang over the whole family in like a shadow. And I'm just thinking, this is a Hitchcock film. And it makes total sense to find out that Roger Corman literally said, I want a Psycho ripoff. I was so in at this point. I was like, bang, I love it. And the whole film, like I said before, is about confusion, misdirection, gaslighting. We have characters plotting to completely gaslight and torment and confuse and manipulate other characters whilst another mystery is going on in the background. And we kind of get a feeling of that, but we're not sure what the motivations are, who's doing what, or what this film's even really about. Some critics called it a mess, but I actually think it's not convoluted. It's a mystery with layers of different plot lines and character motivations clashing against each other. But I didn't see any gaping plot holes. I didn't notice any real big problems. And I actually think for a first-time director, he had a great handle on the storytelling as all that unfolded.
I had to watch this more than once, to be honest with you, because I found myself to be quite confused a few times of what was going on. Again, it's called Dementia 13, so I guess it was going for that. But I found myself confused about the cast, the characters, and who was brother to who, and I had to go back and check it out. And the way the plot moved confused me a little bit, but I guess that's what he was going for.
I'm sure there was plot holes or major issues, but I was brought along with the story. I believed in it enough to overlook those things. If you weren't, then fair enough.
I was actually very excited that it was in Ireland, and they couldn't make it any more obvious that it was in Ireland by calling the castle that they go to Castle Halloran, number 1, and it starts off with her going to Ireland on an Aer Lingus plane. So obviously, we've been on Aer Lingus planes, we've been to Ireland, and I really did like that. But let me just say right now, the fucking Irish accents, they're awful. They were very, very bad. They are odd. They don't come up often. They're a sort of, I don't know, what you call them, descendants of landowner, loosely aristocrat sort of family. And those families in Ireland do speak with complete posh English accents. But it is odd because you have those characters who make up the majority of the characters you see on screen. Then you have 2 American women who are the other 2 sort of main characters. And then you have Irish accents very occasionally, when they stop off into a pub, or the poacher character. Yeah. The actual Irish accents dot up so unfrequently that I kept forgetting this movie's actually set in Ireland. But they apparently were Irish actors brought in from a theatre school. So I don't really understand why the accents were so bad. But even the Aer Lingus girl, I was listening to it. That was bad.
And she was making the announcement. I was like, is she Norwegian? What's going on here? What accent is that?
Aer Lingus Irish International Airlines wish you Cape Mila Fáilte. Your baggage will be delivered shortly on the conveyor belt.
That was terrible.
It was awful, yeah.
I literally was like, get to the plane. I was like, what the fuck is going on in this? You've got these really zany characters. The poacher crawling around the bushes and they're telling him, get off the estate now. And I'm like, this is going to be madcap. This is going to be great. So I was really into it by this point.
He was a funny character. I liked him. And you start meeting all the characters and they're all a bit odd. You know, the mother, she reminded me a lot of the house servant from Rebecca. She's got this creepy air over her and she's been driven mad by the death of her young daughter, Kathleen, who seemingly drowned in this pond that's on the estate. The family doctor, who seems to be way too involved and kind of becomes the star of the film as it goes on.
And I really like this character because later on, as we get into it, you talked about this being Friday the 13th before it was Friday the 13th. He becomes more like the Doctor from Halloween.
Yeah, no, he does
basically
it,
like chasing around Michael Myers.
It is weird, like, because the start of the film, our main character is the villain, which I also really like because, you know, it's always fun when you're following the villain. And it's Louise, this bitch, you know, she's worming her way in. Her husband's dead at home, but she's lying to the family right to their face saying, oh yeah, he's gone to New York for a trip. The older brother, Richard, has sussed her out. He doesn't like her. The younger brother, who's a bit kind of like nebbishy and probably an easy pushover, is more taken with her. The fiancé of Richard's shown up and she's not sure about her. And they're all having this awkward meal around the family dinner table. For some reason, the mother, ever since Kathleen died, she's like, no, a wedding will never take place here. I don't want that woman here, blah, blah, blah. It's all arguing. Louise, the whole time, is doing the Terminator eye scan, looking at everyone's interactions, learning about this grief from this dead family member, and putting a plan together.
And for some reason, every year, to help with their grief, they have a ceremony to mark her death. Every year, the mother puts flowers on the grave, and it's the same every year. She faints all dramatically. Oh! And then she's helped up to bed by Louise. You know, you can see how much Kathleen is still ingrained into all their thoughts, because it seems like every single place in these big estates of someone who's died, they always have a giant portrait looking over the whole family as they were at the dinner table. I've always found it very surreal when relatives are cremated and like some families keep their ashes on a fireplace.
But yeah, this whole sequence is great because Louise finally starts putting her plan into place. She helps the mother up to the bed. She starts basically insinuating that Kathleen's ghost has been communicating with her. And the mother buys right into it because she's probably been hearing voices going crazy. So she's like completely bought in and she's like, oh, we'll talk about this more tomorrow. Leaves the mum wanting more, basically.
There's something in this house, like music in the hallways, like a child's music, asking me something, but more like begging me. Begging for what? Begging for her mother to listen to her.
Louise pretends to go to sleep but then creeps back out, breaks into the old toy room, finding different toys that Kathleen must have used to play with. Her idea is that tying them all to strings and leaving them at the bottom of the pond with the idea that they'll float up during the day. Pretty clever. I don't know how she was able to time it so well. I don't know if she like went to the scouts and is an expert at tying knots and knows like can time a knot to unloosen within 10 hours or something, but whatever, that's her plan. You know, it's quite well shot swimming sequences. Again, the black and white adds this otherworldly effect to when they're underwater and she's swimming about, tying all the toys down at the bottom, and then she comes across a grave for Kathleen built under the pond and what appears to be a perfectly preserved version of Kathleen. And she understandably freaks the fuck out, swims to the surface screaming. As she gets to the surface, she's staring at the feet of a mystery person. And as she pans up, she sees a crazy axe-wielding murderer who starts swinging that axe down and fucking kills her. Kind of reminiscent to Psycho, again, in the shower scene where she's getting stabbed repeatedly, but you never see it. You never quite see her getting axed to death, but she does, and she falls to the bottom of the pond. And I was like, fucking hell. If I wasn't in before, now I'm fully in.
We're used to horror films now on the vein of like Saw, where you're seeing body parts get chopped up and stuff like that, all that gore. And I like the way that this was cut. Great.
This whole sequence was fucking perfect. It built up the suspense. I never saw it coming. You had the first surprise shock of the grave underwater and a pristine version of Kathleen. And I'm thinking, oh shit, it's not a Hitchcock gaslighting manipulation crime plot. It's a ghost story. And then she swims up, and then you have the double scare reveal of, oh no, it's a slasher movie with this axe-wielding murderer.
I didn't obviously like Louise, but I gotta give her props of how hard she worked to try and get this money. Kind of like, just give her the money, man. Do you know what I mean? And I had settled into the film of Louise is this character that we're gonna follow the duration of this whole film. And for her to get chopped up halfway through it, I was like, that's fucking quality, man.
And from this point forward, the narrative essentially becomes a free-for-all, because the focal point of whoever apparently seems to be the main character is just whoever can move the plot along best at that point. And it becomes really unpredictable until towards the end, where I did kind of predict fairly early who was going to be the killer. But even then, I still couldn't work out exactly what was going on. All right, you had the axe-wielding murderer who definitely felt like a physical, real, normal person committing a conventional murder, but you had Kathleen seemingly preserved at the bottom with this gravesite that was built underwater. So I was thinking, like, what's that? Is this also a ghost story? Those elements of it kept me guessing right up to the end. So the mother wakes up the next day and she's desperate to find Louise because she wants to continue the conversation from last night. But no one can find her. None of the cars are missing. So they were kind of wondering, like, oh, is she okay? But no one's that bothered. It's a sprawling estate. She could be in a fucking living room just watching telly somewhere and you wouldn't find her for 2 days. So no one's that worried, but the mother's really insistent on wanting to find her. And we start to focus on the younger brother, Billy. He starts having these flashback sequences to him as a child playing with Kathleen. And you're thinking, okay, was Billy responsible? Does he have a lot of guilt? But we don't get into this properly until a conversation with the young fiance to Richard. He can't sleep and she's chatting to him and she's asking him about these dreams that he has.
The man is in the shadows. You can almost recognize him, but not really. He says that he's insane, and that someone else in the room is insane also. That he's going to nod his head. And when he does, that other insane person will nod their head.
You know, it's quite an intense scene. The camera's zooming into him as he describes it, as he's looking into a mirror. Now I really think Billy's the killer, but realizing that scary man climbing up the wall, I thought it was going to be himself, but apparently it's Richard, so now I'm thrown off again. At the same time, the doctor decides to drain the pond, and it reveals this headstone saying, "I'm sorry, Kathleen," but her perfectly preserved body is gone. So still I'm thinking, okay, so is this all physically happening in the real world and it's someone's weird plotting or someone's doing? Is there a ghost? You know, they can physically see this stonework. And as the doctor says, Richard was a talented stoneworker back in the day, but now he apparently only works with metal. So Richard's kind of having the finger pointed towards him a little bit. But that doesn't explain the fact that we, the audience, saw that perfectly preserved version of Kathleen. So is it still a ghost story? It could be multi-layered. It could be that there is conniving going on from real people, but there's a ghost story in amongst it also manipulating or overseeing events. And you just don't know. It's all kind of going everywhere. And all the characters have their own things going on. And I honestly still feel like it was juggled all really well by Coppola.
Yeah, how'd you build a gravestone underwater though?
It's kind of like that question, how did they fit the model boat into the bottle?
Do you reckon it was drained and then the water was put back after the...
My guess would be it was made and then brought down there. I don't know though. No, that was just my guess.
Yeah,
we never find out.
Like, the film takes a turn to where now we focus really on the doctor trying to piece everything together. And I really like this because it goes from like a ghost story horror to a hunt film.
And the doctor really did start giving Inspector Cluedo's vibes. You know, he's got these funny, eccentric lines he throws out, and he's always in that posh, upper-class English sort of way, always mugging people off politely and annoying everyone, but he doesn't seem to care, and he's not part of the family and he shouldn't really be there, but he just always is there. And the mum herself from the get-go is saying, you know, you're supposed to treat my body, stop trying to treat my mind. And he's giving her these metaphors and you think, okay, is he trying to manipulate her? Is he trying to gaslight her?
Consider your mind as a bird in your hand. When it's relaxed, it lies quiet and easy. But when it's tense and frightened, it strains to leave you. Quite a simple principle, isn't it?
I loved him, man.
Did you?
It was like a little like Columbo running around, or Kojak, who loves you, baby. And I was like, this guy's cool as fuck, man.
And he was that classic case of a great actor can deliver nearly any line. Because like you said, there's certain lines in this movie that are...
hammy.
Well, they're hammy, but there's sometimes where they're just odd. And their oddness nearly works for it. Because, you know, there's one moment where one of the American girls is talking about the other American girl, and she's like, oh, I could tell she was an American girl raised on promises. And I don't really know what that means, or what it's supposed to mean in the context of the character or the story or what she was trying to gain. And I was thinking about that. That's really odd. And then I also thought about Tom Petty's song.
Yeah.
Says that word for word. I looked up and it was apparently inspiration for it. So as much as the lines are terrible at times, I found it kind of interesting. And it especially worked for the Doctor because he's such a good actor. Moments that should have felt really awkward and clunky and not worked brilliantly because he delivered them so well.
Yeah, that Tom Petty thing, that really like stuck in my head. This came out, wasn't well received, but it clearly influenced people. He's obviously seen that and loved it so much. He's transplanted it into one of his greatest songs, and I was like, this is brilliant.
At this point, you know, the family's kind of turning on each other. The mother's freaking out because she's like, where's Louise? I want to speak to Kathleen. Kane is getting upset because she's like, I want to marry you. And your family's weird. What's going on? Why are you sneaking off to that weird little dungeon where you work on your metalworks? And he's like, oh, don't worry about that. I was just checking something. My dad used to work here. The Doctor's kind of pointing a finger at Richard, so they fucking hate him and want nothing to do with him. So he turns to Billy and says, well, Billy, no one else likes me at the minute, so you've got to give me a hand. Let's go to the pub. So they continue their investigation at the pub, and he's sort of asking around, but you realise quite quickly that he's not really coming to town because he's expecting to find Louise. He's coming to town, I think, because he wants to get Billy on his own. And he starts asking him questions and kind of poking at him and nearly putting him under some sort of hypnosis, it feels like, as Billy then starts reciting this weird nursery rhyme.
What happened to Louise?
Fishy, fishy in the brook. Daddy caught you on a hook. Fishy, fishy in the brook. Daddy caught you on a hook.
And then it just fades away. And again, I was sitting there like, so what's going on? Like, well, who's doing what? I don't understand. But I wasn't annoyed. I wasn't frustrated. Every weird moment like that was just putting another hook in me.
This film's a real head scratcher to me. It is called Dementia 13. You know, I wasn't surprised, but I was just kind of more intrigued. I wasn't at any point thinking, this is so confusing, I want to walk away from this film.
You want the tiara.
The following night, Lady Halloran, the mother, is attacked while looking for Louise in some sort of outhouse barn area. She comes across this body and she freaks out. Suddenly the axe murderer is outside and he's smashing planks of wood in. And it's one of those things where if you stop and bring yourself out of the emotion of the moment, if it has captured you, and you think, why isn't he just running through the door? Why is he like trying to break his way in? But in the moment, I was fully into it. She manages to get away, but it's plot-wise, I guess it moved it on a little bit because now other characters are aware of this axe-wielding murderer. But at the same time, it nearly felt like it was one of those scenes that were thrown in because he's juggling so many things. He had to remind us. By the way, Lady Halloran's still freaking out and trying to channel her dead daughter. And this axe murderer is still running about on the estate, killing people. She collapses outside the courtyard and people start rushing out, but it does that classic thing of people rush out in a certain order. You know, the American girls show up pretty quickly, but then the two brothers take a while to show up and the doctor takes a while to show up. It probably wouldn't be enough time anyway, but if they leave it 30 seconds in film time, that's enough time where any one of them could have run round the courtyard, got rid of the axe, taken their hood off and come out and acted like everything's normal. The doctor is knocking about the estate. He's scratching his head, kind of just doing a bit of thinking about everything that's happened, trying to figure out the plot. And he's reciting that weird nursery rhyme that Billy was singing in the pub to himself when he was in that trance state. He gets caught on a line, no pun intended, about being on a hook. He runs out to the butcher rebuilding that's outside. Doesn't seem like a good way to store meat, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Guess that's how they did it back in the day. And next to a bunch of slaughtered pigs is Louise, hung up. Nearby is this perfectly preserved body of Kathleen. This has all been kicking off, we forgot to add, whilst the wedding has been going on. Because the mother is out of it and kind of just in bed, freaked out. Kane, pretty unsympathetic, but I get it because the mother's been nothing but a bitch to her, is like, well, your mum's fucking going mental up in bed. Let's use it as an opportunity to have our wedding. So they get married and they're having a great time, but the doctor upsets her, and so she runs off into a barn and the husband goes with her, and they're seemingly going to have their first fuck on a bale of hay. Fair enough. No problems.
Well, I don't know. They're in a fucking castle, number one, yeah? There would be like hundreds of rooms. Like, why didn't you just go to one of the rooms? Like, why'd you have to do it on a bale of hay? But each to their own, like, you know what I mean? Better than nothing.
As the doctor has obviously come across Louise and this perfectly preserved ghost, Kathleen, he decides to pick her up and place her by the pond in broad daylight in front of everyone. So again, I was brought round to thinking, oh, is the doctor still conniving? Like, just because he realises there's other connivers or other things happening, maybe he's still trying to plot to get that inheritance.
It was quite hectic, which goes in line with the rest of the film, really.
Everyone rushes out to see this body by the lake, and they see this perfectly preserved Kathleen, and everyone's gathered around and they're all freaking out like, what's going on? Out from the darkness comes the axe-wielding murderer revealed as Billy, which we all pretty much guessed it was going to be at this point. But I'd been thrown off that trail enough to be satisfied when it did turn out to be Billy. And he's swinging the axe about, the doctor's hiding in a bush and shoots him, and you realise, okay, the doctor really was the hero, had good intentions the whole time. Billy falls dead. The whole sequence is nearly like that classic Shutter Island psychiatrist has to do a giant real-world theatrical therapy session in order to make Billy realise what was going on and why he was having all this guilt. And it's all very solemn and respectful. And then someone says, well, how's Kathleen preserved? And he says, oh, it's a wax model, and just smashes her face in with an axe.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, I think that was out of order from the doctor to
it was crazy.
do that, because obviously they don't know it's a waxwork. She's dead. So, like, well, why did you do that? Like, why did you smash her face in front of everyone?
Yeah, it's pretty fucking insensitive.
But, like, my take on it is he can't be the one that randomly knows that Billy is doing it and then just shoot him, because everyone will be like, what are you doing? Like, why have you just shot Billy? So the doctor has to put the waxwork model there to entice Billy out. Did you feel that it was a bit of a damp squib ending, or?
No, I loved it. You know, Billy getting shot, everyone coming out and seeing this body of Kathleen. All the bizarre storylines and mysteries that were swirling around and interacting with each other finally all made sense together. I just cracked out laughing at him smashing Kathleen's face in at the end with the axe, and then it instantly rolls to credits. But no, I was pretty satisfied with it.
I gotta tell the truth, I watched this film twice. Doing this review, I think I should have actually watched it a third time. Talking about the plotting now, I understand it more. I don't know if it was a concentration thing, but I did struggle with it, you know. This was my pick. I always feel a bit of added pressure when I have to pick the film.
Why?
I don't know, because I'm always like, although I don't always want it to be a great film, like sometimes I...
Yeah, but we're a film show. We're not getting together to go to the cinema. Like, it can be a bad film.
I always want it to be semi-decent. Maybe that's my shortcomings of like, I want Declan to like this, you know. But I'm glad I picked it. It's kind of like, what was George Lucas's first film, American Graffiti?
Which features Dementia 13 on a billboard at one point in the background.
Oh, really? I didn't actually know that. I wasn't doing that as a throwaway piece. I was just very intrigued to see what his first effort was. Where did this guy come from? What was his debut like? And I was pleasantly surprised about how good it was. If you're a Francis Ford Coppola fan, this is a fantastic film to watch. It really is.
So you liked it?
I liked it, but it was a hard film for me to watch.
Well, Roger Corman did also struggle with it. He hated the final product that he finally saw. He was promised violence and sex and nudity, and he didn't get any of it. And he actually forced Coppola to go back in and film at least one extra kill scene, which was why we had this addition of the comical poacher character who barely interacts with any other character and is only seen twice for 2 scenes, one when he's introduced and the other when he ends up being decapitated next to the pond. In quite a long drawn out scene that I actually really enjoyed. I don't know if Coppola actually shot this extra scene, but it didn't feel out of place with the rest of the movie and the style of the rest of the movie and the way he approached the other murder scenes in terms of a long build up and then a sudden blistering attack. So I assume it was, but I actually really did like those additions. But Roger Corman hated the final product. He was really angry with Coppola, who he felt completely took this opportunity that he handed to him on a platter and did the opposite of what he promised him. He also felt like it was too confusing and he wanted voiceovers to be dubbed in throughout explaining what was going on. But I'm so glad they didn't, because that would have ruined the film in my opinion. He even went so far as to bring in another director to pad the film out because he felt it was so short by filming a opening scene that had nothing to do with the rest of the film. A kind of William Castle-esque gimmick where an actor playing a psychiatrist would give the audience a psychological exam to make sure that they're actually fit to withstand the horrors that will be this movie. Again, like William Castle, they even provided the movie theatres with psychological questionnaires to be handed out that could be filled in while this scene was going on. And I'm assuming you luckily didn't see that version of the movie with that stupid scene added. But yeah, it's pretty funny that Roger Corman, who was, knew a thing or two about a thing or two, especially when it came to movies, because obviously he was too blinded by his being annoyed about the fact that Coppola did the switcheroo on him in terms of the kind of film he'd ordered, that he couldn't see what a talent was there behind this film, even for all its flaws. So yeah, for me, I really like this film. It's a bizarre oddity in the film world. Coppola's first film, if you ask me what I reckon that would be, the last thing I would have guessed would be a Hitchcockian slasher movie set in Ireland. That, for the most part, other than the killer, kept me guessing right to the end. So that is a yes from the Filmy McFilm Film Show.
Can I just end on the fact that legendary Roger Corman sided with my thoughts of it being confusing, so therefore I am right.
Okay, fair enough.